seen before.
Jeff says he has no idea how the object entered his leg. He remembers no incident that might have somehow allowed metal to become lodged in his body. There is no scar anywhere near the implant.
Are the other ones you've removed as close to the skin as this one?
No, they're usually closer to the bone. Initially, it could have been deep and then it worked its way superficially.
Before we go into surgery to remove the implant, we need to determine what this object really is. We need to do a few series of tests of magnetism and radio frequency.
This is a 250-pound magnet, and with that we have quite a bit of magnetic force here. If this object will react to a magnetic field, it should pull it closer to the skin. Is this the spot here, Jeff?
Right there.
Right here, okay. Yeah, it does stand out a little bit. See the skin?
Yeah, I can. See, it's pulling out in just a small circular area, is that right?
Right.
How far out would you say that it's pulling out?
A good 1/8 of an inch.
Good 1/8 of an inch.
Now we're going to be testing for radioactivity, electromagnetic fields, and radio frequencies next.
Before we permanently remove this implant, we need to see if there's anything detectable going on. We do know that it's magnetic. Maybe it's giving off a radioactivity, maybe it's giving off a radio signal. We need to determine if it's just a piece of metal or it has some greater purpose.
This instrument is called a Gauss meter, and it's for the detection of electromagnetic fields. Let's see what happens. Okay. That noise is a very strong electromagnetic field. Let's get a reading of 10 milligauss, which is extremely strong.
It's highly unusual for a tiny speck of metal to give off such a strong signal, unless it's connected to a power source.
I wasn't that curious up until just now when you got a reading on output.
Now the next instrument we use is a radio frequency detector. We have two ranges here that we can change from. One is the gigahertz range and the other is the megahertz range.
Dr. Lear is sweeping a wide range of possible radio frequencies, from the bottom of the megahertz range and continuing upward to the top of the gigahertz range. Megahertz is the wavelength used by television and FM radio stations. Gigahertz is much higher, used for microwave ovens and cell phones, among other applications.
It is emitting a radio frequency. It looks to be like about 59.125254 gigahertz. This is the megahertz range now, which is a 35.893, and this is megahertz.
The megahertz reading fell under a VHF band. The VHF band is used by satellite radio and terrestrial communication, which is used by the government as well as the consumers.
Well, I think we've learned something today, and we'll wait for tomorrow to have it in our hand.
The evidence that we were able to test was pretty interesting, actually. We came out with the reading of 10 milligauss and also a radio frequency of 35 megahertz and 59 gigahertz.
35 megahertz is VHF, and that's radio, FM radio, or television. Good chance there's a lot of background radiation around. You might have picked that up. But the other one, 59 gigahertz?
59 gigahertz.
That's extremely high frequency. Those are the radio frequencies that radio astronomers use to detect radio frequencies coming in from outer space.
Why would an object under someone's skin be generating that kind of frequency? One is that the thing is sending a signal at a frequency that does travel pretty far. Two is that it's kind of also a homing beacon.
These readings are not particularly magnitude-wise very powerful, so it could be just part of the ambient environment in space where you took your readings. It's basically it's pretty inconclusive until we can get that implant out and do some further testing.
So here we are, Jeff, at the surgical suite. The systems are all ready. The surgical suite is ready to go, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we pull out.
Before the operation, the medical team extracts blood from Jeff, so the object can be stored in the same fluid it was once immersed in.
Okay, you're all set.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Actually, the first part, I want everyone to back up a little because I really have to find this thing.
Dr. John Matriciano, a general surgeon practicing in Thousand Oaks, California, is conducting the operation.
There we see it.
There we go.
Finally. Ah.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to use the local anesthesia. Now we're going right to the spot we marked before. So we're going here. So I'll make a little nick with the skin. So I can't feel this, so I am going to rely a little bit on the x-ray. So we'll back off a little bit. Okay, I think we begin to see something here. Okay.
Yeah.
So look at a little bit of a black dot going there.
Yep.
Make sure we're on the same spot. I'm going to grasp this if I can.
Looks like you're on it.
Looks like we're right on it, so.
Are you gripping it hard? Try not to damage it.
No, it's slippery. I've got it here. See it?
Yeah, it's definitely solid.
Dr. Matriciano is surprised to find that Jeff's tissue has attached itself to the object.
It looked like it was encapsulated in organic material that was actually attached to Jeff's body. So there was a little bit of a tugging to get it out there.
That's it.
Yep.
We got it. Go left for a second. That's it.
The size was surprising of the object. It appeared more flat and roundish, and I was really surprised that something of that size was generating a signal outside of my body.
So it's in the serum.
Okay. I'm just curious to see what happens, like many are, now that it's out, what changes.
Yeah, the next step with this will be to get it to the lab to begin running our tests on it.
When the team has the implant analyzed,
There it is.
they discover something no one had ever expected.
It almost looks like a tiny meteorite.
Thank you, Roger.
After successfully removing an alleged alien implant from the leg of Jeff Harvey, the team conducts tests to determine if it still emits an unusual radio frequency as it did before.
Tell me about the radio frequency test.
The radio frequency actually canceled and stopped.
The implant is no longer emitting a signal.
Whether or not it's been turned off or been told not to work anymore or been grounded out, the frequencies of this type of object means there's much more implication to the object than what meets the eye.
Hey, Richard. I brought the sample that we discussed. You want to show us the optical microscope?
Sure.
The next step is to analyze the object itself. Is it something that can be identified, or is it an anomalous object? The team takes the sample to Richard Matson of SEAL Labs in El Segundo, California. With 36 years' experience, the company is one of the leading independent analysis laboratories in the country.
In order to take a scientific approach to this, we have to see actually what this thing is, submit it for metallurgical and biological testing, and see if we do have anything here.
The sample is pretty small. It's only about 1 to 2 millimeters across.
And what are you looking for at this point in time?
The geometry, the shape, the color, the surface features, surface texture, just a good place to start. So it's irregular in shape. It looks like it's black and brown in color. It almost looks like a tiny meteorite.
Any fracture lines or?
No.
Nothing?
It doesn't look man-made or manufactured. Under the optical microscope at 40x magnification, we got a great sense of what it looks like.
The object has two distinct areas, a light inner layer and a dark outer shell.
I do look at the outside surface, and it did appear to be blackened or charred, if you want to say.
You could be looking at rust.
Yeah, it's true. Oxidation.
Yeah.
But a closer look reveals a third area, an unusual protrusion on the object.
It appears to be something that's dried, gel-like.
That we're calling the fin, because it kind of looks like a fin coming off the side. And I'm very curious to know, what's this made of? So this is a scanning electron microscope. Right here we have an electron source that shoots electrons down vertically at the sample. We can scan the sample in X and Y.
We can get X-ray diffraction, which will give us the information about the elements that are in the sample.
It's a nice piece of equipment.
Yeah, it is. There it is.
Can we get the X-ray off of this sort of fin-like material?
Sure. I think we see here that it's not actually a material that's protruding from within the sample. It's actually something attached.
Right.
The spectra of that material, it's organic. So for some reason here, we've got a piece of the human body that's attached itself to the exterior surface of the sample. So this is really interesting because the human body has two kinds of reactions to a foreign object. One was the more extreme case where it would encapsulate it in pus and transport it out. And the second one was where it would just encase it and have a minor inflammatory reaction. It seems here that some material from the human body has actually attached itself to the sample, which to me doesn't seem like either of those cases that Dr. Laird described.
Usually you would reject it, but in this case it's actually embracing it.
Yeah, it's attached itself.
Very interesting.
Does it look like it's attached to the sample in any unusual way?
To me, it doesn't.
The team continues to analyze the object for other anomalies.
We're getting a good sense here of what the elements are within this edge. I see iron, oxygen, and carbon, and then
Sulfur. As you can see, the highest peak is carbon.
the carbon and the oxygen he thought were contaminants.
All of these would be found in body fluids, for example.
But if we remove those, we're left with iron.
Iron.
So it looks like it's probably iron.
Right.
So we've just panned over to a third area of the sample, right? Where we thought it had that black coloration. There are our peaks.
Wow.
They're coming up very similar. So the phosphorus is, there's more phosphorus in this area.
For now, I'm really not seeing anything too unusual. Basically, we have a small piece, about 1 to 2 millimeters in diameter, made of iron.
In fact, it is medically possible for foreign objects to migrate inside the body and emerge at points far from where they entered, sometimes years later.
My job as a scientist is just to look at the data and see if there's anything unusual, and in this case, there really isn't anything yet that has surprised us. My job is to rain on their parade, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to do that again.
Ted believes this implant is an iron pellet and that its emergence is a natural occurrence.
We could debate this case all night long and debate this case forever if we want to, but the fact is it was a traumatic event in his life. You took it to the lab, you ran your tests, and we found out that at least one test was very, very strange, that there was actual human tissue, protein, growing from within a fracture in the object itself.
You know, I know it was pretty exciting to have an opportunity to surgically remove what we thought might be some sort of foreign object or alien implant. As far as I can tell, after all of our scientific tests of it, it just looks like simply a small fragment of oxidized iron.
What about the tissue growing out of the metal? We just don't have that technology here on Earth, so therefore I say this is beyond our technology. It's quite possibly alien. We've taken technology and applied it to ufology. Rarely is that done in this field. The debunker will always say to you, you haven't proven the existence of a UFO, as if you've got to produce the UFO on the table for it to be true. But on the other hand, the ufologist will say, well, you haven't disproven the UFO. Show me something that says this is anything but a UFO. And you know what? We have not found one thing to disprove that there's an extraterrestrial presence affecting us on planet Earth, interfering with our lives, and traveling through our skies.
What began on a lonely New Hampshire highway in 1961, a couple allegedly chased down and abducted by aliens, continues to this day. Hundreds of news stories of alien abduction are reported every year, but the full accounts of what happens during the